Lars Engwall.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And as you can see from the program, the title of my talk is Universities, Regulators, Market Actors and Scrutinizers. And the background here is a book that we published in the beginning of this year. We've been working on corporate governance for quite some time in my department, and that materialized in this book, which came out early this year. And what we argue there is that all types of organizations are under three types of governance. There are regulators, political bodies. There are market actors, like competitors, customers, and providers. And so important what we call scrutinizers. Different kinds of actors like auditors, increasingly media, and non-government organizations, and even professions. And we can say then that the regulators, they provide rules, and if they are not followed, they have punishments. Market actors give benchmarks, and if you don't listen to them, you may have a market verdict, even bankruptcy. And in terms of the scrutinizers' norms. And here you'll be punished by naming and shaming. And this is increasingly becoming significant, isn't it?
It's very low.
Okay. This is increasingly coming into all types of organizations. They may follow the rules, they may be very profitable, but if there is a scandal in the media, then they have a problem. You may recognize here that those of you, which most of you are familiar with the new institutional framework. We could talk about the coercive, mimetic, and normative forces. So this is the background. And if we then move on to universities and put the university in the middle, and this is a nice picture is my home university, Uppsala. And the same goes then for universities as any other organization. But we could then also relate this to a work by Burton Clark from 1983. In that book, you will find this triangle where he is talking about the state authority, the market, and the academic oligarchy. And as you can see, he classifies different systems inside this triangle. So for him, USSR was the typical example of where the state authority was strong. The market it was the United States, and the scrutinizers in terms of the profession, that was his example, Italy. And then you'll find a number of other countries in between. And it has passed some time since 1983, and in our research we'll found that there have been some developments in many countries since Clark's work. That we see more and more that the state is giving authority to the market. The marketization related to the work we heard just about, that we see more of piecemeal and project financing. But they are not completely giving up. What has happened then is that we see more of valuations, that regulators have delegated to the market, but they also take help through different kinds of evaluations. And here we have, in addition to the formal evaluations, we see more and more accreditations and rankings, so the sorting of different kinds of institutions. So with this framework, we can also see that universities, they tend to speak back. In terms of regulators, we see that they doing persuasion. They try to persuade regulators to formulate rules which are to their advantage. They also tell them that they are fulfilling the rules that exist. And we also see an increasing tendency of promotion, that universities are telling students or prospective students how wonderful life they would have if they come to that particular university. Most of the time these are nice pictures where they are there sitting in lawns and having very nice time. And there are also these advertisements telling them that if they come there, they will have a very nice future in their working life. But the promotion also goes for faculty and increasingly in terms of resources. It has become so important to tell that your institution is a wonderful one. And in terms of scrutinizers, we can see protection, that universities, like many other organizations, they try to protect themselves. We see that former journalists, they are shifting side, going from being the critical people, going to organizations and then defending their organizations against their younger colleagues. And the same goes also for evaluations, that we see an increasingly tendency for universities to create different kinds of units in order to be prepared for all these evaluations and not least accreditations and rankings and so forth. So this means that there might be then people who have to do this persuasion, promotion and protection. And the result is increasing administration. And as an example I show you here, it's a newly constructed administrative building at Uppsala University. Some people call it the Finland ferry, and others think it's more of a Titanic. And this building houses around almost 1,000 employees. And as we have seen, and others, Chiki for instance, have also found that administrative units in universities are increasing much faster than the university as a whole. Just one illustration here from Uppsala that we see, we did some studies between 1998 and 2018, and the real expansion we saw in communication, but also in contract education, quality enhancement, etc. You see these figures are rather high in relation to the green bar. You can see about the total Uppsala University increased by 35%. So administration is growing much faster than the faculty. So finally then, to sum up my arguments in a nutshell, has been that we see three basic forces of governance: rules from regulators, benchmarks from market actors, and norms from scrutinizers. And there has been changes then since the days of Burton Clark in the early 1980s, that regulators, they provide less rules, but they govern more through market actors and scrutinizers. And we see reactions in the universities that they use persuasion towards regulators, promotion towards market actors, and protection towards scrutinizers. And the internal effects of this is administrative overhead, which is increasing, branding, and hierarchical control. Thank you.